Hey everyone, it's Rob, just a guy with a hobby and a love for music. So I've been playing guitar for about 10 years now, and I'm actually learning to play What Lies Beneath by Andy James. If you don't know who he is the guitarist for Five Finger Death Punch now, but a long time ago, well actually not even a long time ago, before he was in the band, he did a lot of solo stuff. So he's more comparable to like, I don't know, Joe Satriani and that type of guitarist where they do their solo content and they're really good guitarist. So over the course of learning guitar, I've always kind of thought, I'll never be able to learn something like this. This is something that I would never be able to play in my entire life. But I'm working on it and I'm actually kind of playing it. So I'm still working on cleaning it up. I don't have everything completely down, but it's getting there. But this kind of made me think about what would I've done differently learning guitar over these past 10 years. And I kind of have a list of 5 things that I'm going to go over that I wish I would have known sooner that I think have dramatically helped my playing. So let's jump into them. Okay, so I pulled you guys down here because it's going to be a little easier to see what's going on with the actual guitar. But the very first tip that I have is using an open hand versus a closed picking hand. So when I started playing guitar, I started with an open hand, like this. So when I would play, it would be like this, and then sometimes I would rest my pinky here, around here, and then it would like give me stability when I'm strumming. But this kind of comes with an issue when you start playing faster stuff or if you're playing solo content, because if you're flying around all the time, you have a pretty good probability of actually hitting these strings and causing a lot of string noise. And yeah, that's it doesn't sound great. So that's not what you want. So I kind of watched a lot of videos about this, and at first I was like, oh, whatever. This doesn't really make a difference. Going from this to this, it doesn't really even do anything. And so I tried it, and it took me probably a week or two, I'd say, of playing like this and getting used to it because naturally my fingers kept wanting to move out. But I've got it down now to where I play with a closed hand, and I definitely feel like it is way more efficient. I don't have as much string noise, and if I do have string noise, it's way easier for me to like just kind of like pull my knuckles back a little bit because I do have string noise every once in a while. If I'm not paying attention, my hand will come in and kind of like rub against these strings. But once I notice it, all I have to do is just quickly pull my wrist back slightly, and then it's fine. But this is really helpful for sweep picking and solos. And honestly, I feel like it is way more efficient because I don't know, this might sound kind of weird, but it's almost like a center of gravity thing where like you have all this weight here. So when you're moving around, it's kind of like going up and down, and these fingers are pulling your hand down more. But when it's all in a closed fist, it's all very concise, and you don't have that extra weight kind of flopping around everywhere. So that is the very first tip that I have. It's something that took me a little bit to get used to, but once I got it, it kind of paid off in massive dividends. So uh, let's go on to the next one. All right, so I moved the camera down just a little bit, so that way it's a little easier to see. But my second point is actually holding the guitar properly. And what I mean by this is when I first started, I would have my thumb like this, kind of parallel with the neck, and then I would just slide up and down the neck and play. And that felt natural to me because it just was easy to slide up and down. However, what I didn't realize is that you kind of give up a lot of control and a lot of support by not having your thumb directly behind your fingers. And it makes things a little harder to play when you don't have that support. So what I do now is I actually hold the guitar like this, and I kind of play with these fingers flat or like this. And it's way easier to control, and my fingers have a lot more support and strength behind them. So you can kind of really, really focus on fretting, and you don't feel like you don't like slip or slide or anything like that, or you don't feel like weak or anything like that, and it's actually a lot easier for me to like go up and down this way by having my thumb in the middle. So this takes some time to get used to, especially the longer that you've been playing. So for me, I've been playing like 8 or 9 years with putting my thumb like this. And when you play for that long, you kind of build up some really bad habits, and it takes a while to break them. So this is one of those things that this took me the longest to adjust to, because I kept wanting to put my thumb parallel with the fretboard and not perpendicular to it. And yeah, it's definitely something that you really have to work on. So as long as you're not like death gripping the guitar, it should feel nice and easy, and it really allows you to hone in on efficiency, which leads into my next point, and that is fretting as light as possible and trying to eliminate as much movement from fretting as you can. So from here on out, the rest of the tips that I have, I'm actively still trying to work on and adjust and fix in my playing. So I haven't mastered these next three. But by eliminating as much movement and fretting as you can, you really increase efficiency and you really reduce the amount of strain on your wrist. That's kind of the big thing. You don't want to like really stress out your wrist here, because one, you're going to hurt yourself, and then two, the more strain that you have on your wrist, the slower you're going to be able to play, because if your wrist is stressed out and you can't really like actually physically move your wrist without it hurting, I mean, that's going to be an issue. So really, it should feel like butter. Like it should be effortless when you're playing. And that takes a long time to get used to, and I think that's just something that almost every single guitarist in the world, even if they're professional, they still have to work on this. So I think this is something that basically you just have to be conscious of it, and it's something that you always work on, because no one's ever going to be perfect with this. It doesn't matter how good you are. Even like the best of the best, I would assume, still work on efficiency, because no one is 100% efficient. But specifically with fretting as light as possible, there's a couple exercises that you can do. I know that Bernth has a lot of exercises. I can link his YouTube channel below. I've watched a lot of his videos. He's got some really, really good content for exercises. But essentially, it's like you're playing you put your fingers in like a chord pattern, and then you just play one note at a time, lift it up, play the next one. And then what you're doing is you're trying not to move these fingers off of the strings. You want it to be very, well, efficient, and you just do one at a time, and you want to try to get some like finger independence working on it. So yeah, that is my third one, and let's go into the fourth one, and then I'll jump back to my face cam for the fifth one. But the fourth one is when you're practicing solos and faster stuff, slow it down and use a metronome. When I first started playing, I would basically just listen to the song, look at the tab, and then immediately try to play it at the speed it was and try to figure it out by ear. And yeah, that's fine for slower sections and rhythm sections where it's either just chords or, it's something that isn't very technical or doesn't need to be super, super precise. But the issue is if you do this with solos, it can sound really muddy and not clean, because you could be accidentally hitting strings that you don't mean to, or you could be overpicking or anything like that. So the absolute best thing to do is to slow it way down. Use a metronome, and it's going to be infuriating at first, because you're going to be like, why am I doing this? Why is this so slow? But what will happen is, as you build up speed, you'll find that you'll have like the mental or muscle memory where everything just feels natural. And that's essentially the point that you want to get to when you're doing solos and faster stuff. Like, you shouldn't be overthinking things and overpicking or anything like that. The next thing, I guess, and part of this would be especially pay attention to how you're picking. So when you're alternate picking, you really want to know exactly, like, I'm picking down in this one, I'm picking up, I'm picking down. And then when I move to this string, am I going to pick up or am I going to pick down? Because that needs to be 100% solidified when you speed it up, because otherwise you're going to run into an issue of where you're overpicking, or you're missing something, or you're going to create some extra noise on it. So that's another way to actually clean it up. So kind of overall, everything should kind of feel like it's smooth and kind of you're just skating over everything. And you don't really have to think about it. That's essentially where you want to get to. And the slower that you practice and how you build up your rhythm and everything, it will really pay off with just kind of being able to do it naturally without really having to sit there and be like, oh my god, how am I gonna play this, or I need to play it like this. When you slow it down and you speed it up, you get to the point of where you just know it. So let's jump to the last point. I'll pull you guys back up to the face cam. So my last and final tip is it could be controversial for some people, and I know a lot of guitarists push back on this idea, but it's really to learn music theory, and I think this has been the biggest help for me for writing music, for understanding music, for just kind of knowing what I'm doing. It really makes a difference. And a lot of people will be like, "Well, you don't need to know music theory. It's it should all just be creative." And it's like, yeah, you can play a guitar like that, or you can learn from tabs, which is what I did before. I would just look up the tab, learn how to play it, and go on with my day. But I never actually understood why. Why are these notes played in this order? Or why is this chord progression like this? Or how does this work? That's what music theory teaches you. It teaches you the why and the how stuff actually works behind the scenes. So about a year ago, I started learning it. I had no idea how to read sheet music. I didn't know how chords interacted with each other or chord progressions in general, or like why you would do certain chord progressions in a certain way. And once you learn that, you really start to understand like what is happening when you're looking at music. And you can look at a song and you can see what they did and you can say, "Hey, that's a cool idea. What if I do this?" And I can tweak the progression this way, or I can do it this like this, and you know exactly what you're doing. And it's very, very helpful to be able to do that. And my playing in general has drastically increased. Like just my understanding and my knowledge of music. And I'm still going through and learning how to apply it to the guitar. It's something that I'm basically relearning, but it makes a huge difference. You'd be surprised. So just try it. I know it doesn't seem like it's fun, but to me, when I started getting into it, I thought it was a lot of fun. And I'll link how I learn music theory in the chat, or not in the chat, in the description. So if you want to check it out, I would highly recommend the way I did it. It's essentially just a Udemy course that starts from the very beginning of music and goes all the way until like the 40s and 50s, where you have complete atonal chromaticism that's going on. It gets really wild. Um, but another argument against this is, oh, well, it boxes you in. Music theory boxes you in, and you have to follow a specific set of rules. And while, yes, initially, when you first learn it, there are a lot of rules. There's very specific ways that notes or intervals interact with each other that are better than other ways. And by better, I mean they just sound better to people. However, as you get further on and you learn more and more, you learn how to bend those rules and to break them and why you would break them. So instead of just doing random stuff, you know exactly like how you're breaking the rules and what effect you're going to do, like what it's going to have on the music. And that makes a big difference. And so you're not contained in the box. You don't have to follow every single music theory rule ever in writing, because it would create very generic, very simple music that you know everyone would love to listen to and all that stuff, or however you want to say it. Yes, following every rule in the tool set leads to very generic music and boring music. But with music theory, you learn how to break those rules, and you learn why you break those rules and kind of how you can do some really cool stuff with it. So another argument that people have is, well, Jimi Hendrix didn't know music theory and he's a guitar god. It's like, okay, Yes, Jimi Hendrix is an amazing guitar player, but are you and I Jimi Hendrix? No, no, we are not. We are nowhere close to Jimi Hendrix's level. If we were, we certainly wouldn't be sitting in our houses, trying to make music that probably no one's ever going to listen to, that we're just doing for fun. If we were really at the level of Jimi Hendrix, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. We would be out playing shows and like being massive rock stars. So that's not really an argument that you can make. I mean, yes, people have done it before. People have made it big and they've written music without music theory, but it is so uncommon that, like, compared to all the other musicians in the world, that is so rare. Like, they are genius, like, they are absolute geniuses. And you and I just aren't like that. I mean, you could be, and if you are, that's great. Um, but for me, music theory has made a massive difference in helping me understand what I'm doing. And for me, I wouldn't be able to write anything as cool that I think I've written or as creative as I've written without knowing music theory. And that's just the unfortunate truth, at least for me. But if it's different for you, then that's cool. But yeah, I'm not Jimi Hendrix, and in my mind, people like that are very rare to come by. Like it's incredibly rare for someone to just be able to write the music that Jimmy did without any kind of music theory knowledge. So the other big things that music theory really helps you understand is it really helps you visualize stuff on the fretboard, and you know exactly what you're doing, and you can transcribe music. So if something's in a different tuning, you know how to transcribe it to another tuning, or vice versa. You can do anything that you want with it. Um, but overall, I mean, it helps tremendously. The next thing is actually learning the fretboard. This is something that I'm still also working on, is trying to memorize all the notes. And again, it's kind of a pain. It's a pain in the butt to learn, and it takes a long time. But at the end of the day, it just becomes really natural. Like, you can sometimes it's easier to play certain things in another location on the fretboard. So if you know the fretboard, you can move to that location and play it easier there, or something like that. So there's a lot of cool things that you can do once you know what you're doing and know what the notes are. And really, to kind of sum it up, it's just kind of understanding why. Why do you do things the way that you do? Why do certain things sound better? Why do certain things sound worse? How does dissonance and all, like, how do you add dissonance and chromaticism to your music? And you know exactly what you're doing and the intervals that you're using. It really helps solidify, like, what you're actually writing, and you can do it with an intent, I guess, instead of just trying to come up with it randomly. So that's really my rant on music theory, and I would definitely recommend learning it. I'll link how I learned it in the description. But yeah, that's about it. So right before I get into the end here and wrap it up, I just kind of want to go over some stuff that I've been working on. So obviously earlier I mentioned that I was learning What Lies Beneath by Andy James. So I will eventually have a cover of that. That's something that's going to take me a while to get down, I think. But that is something I'm working on. I am working on another orchestral song, and I'll try to get that out when that's done. And I think the next type of song that I'm going to do is in a completely different genre. I kind of want to work with something in the synthwave direction, because I think it would be kind of cool just to kind of try something a little different than what I'm used to and push myself outside of my normal bounds of just writing with orchestral music and stuff like that. And eventually I do want to get into like writing metal type of riffs and stuff like that too. But I think the next kind of track that I'm going to work on is synthwave. And yeah, that's basically a little glimpse of what I have planned moving forward for some of the content that I have. But other than that, if you like the video, let me know. If it hopefully some of these tips will help you out if you haven't done them already. But yeah, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week.